You know what? You're right. Good things do come in small packages. You can't ever get things right. Oh, I love you. I hate you. You're the best. You know, I let you go and do your own thing and you just screw everything up. I feel like we need each other, like we're meant to be. To be honest, we had our good times, but I'm thinking about leaving you. I'm so glad we met. You and me, we're through. We're done. I want to stay with you forever. You're my one and only. Not anymore. You're gone. Hi everyone, today I'm going to give you a quick review about the Sony a6500. Now, first of all, let's start off and talk about this camera, why I bought it and what I like about it. So I bought this camera because I was looking for a camera that was relatively cheap. Now I say relatively cheap, meaning under $2,000. You can buy much better cameras than this one for over $2,000, but under $2,000 was one of my criteria. I also wanted to buy a camera that I could use for travel vlogging, for just carrying around and getting great video quality in a very small package. So this camera really fit that. I mean, when you compare it, the size and weight, you really can't beat it for what it has. This is my iPhone 7, and if you put it next to it, it's smaller than my iPhone 7. It's really not that thick. So it's a great camera to have in terms of just its overall size and portability. Another one of my criteria was having good audio quality. Now, in order to have good audio quality, as a videographer, you need a video out port. So this has a video out port here where I can use an external microphone. So I always put an external microphone on the top here, and I was always able to get excellent audio, and for me that was a tremendous plus. So I was looking at the cheapest, smallest camera that I could get with a microphone out port, and this camera was right there with a couple others. However, this camera had the best video quality. So I looked at all of them, and to me, Sony, I love their image. I love the way it looks. It looks very cinematic and film-like to me. Some people, I've talked to other friends who are vloggers and videographers, and they love Canon, or a lot of them like Canon, to be honest. So unless you're gonna go really high-end and buy a Alexa or a Red camera, we're talking more professional DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. So for them, I don't think you can really beat the image quality for this size. So another one of my criteria was having the ability to shoot 4K. This camera can shoot 4K in 24p and 30p. Obviously I shoot in 24p because I want it to look cinematic, and it also shoots 120 frames per second at full 1080p. So that looks really good. So in terms of image quality, this definitely lived up to the hype, and I can't say too many bad things about the image quality. It's really a great camera, and even though it only has a crop sensor because it's a mirrorless, so meaning it's not as big as a full frame camera like a Sony a7S or a Sony a7S II. In terms of having that crop sensor, didn't really bother me much. I would have liked to have the full frame camera, but in terms of a crop sensor, there are plenty of lenses to choose from. You can still get a great blurred background and an excellent cinematic look. A lot of people like to have a lot of megapixels because they use it to take pictures, and that's great for photography. But if you're looking for videography, you don't want a lot of pixels. Actually, that creates a lot of problems. So one of the best cameras is the Sony a7S, and that's only a 12 megapixel camera. So if you think pixels is going to help you with videography, it's not. So this camera has 24 pixels, and to me that's a happy medium. It's able to produce great video, but at the same time you can get great still photographs. Now they're not going to be as good as the Sony AR2 and some of the high-end Canons and Nikons, but you're gonna get some really great quality. It's still gonna be a 14-bit raw file. So in terms of versatility, this camera is great because it can get great video and great still images. I look for having a wide variety of ISO and how the camera performs at different ISOs. Amazingly enough, this camera goes up to 51,600 ISO, which is crazy, and it goes all the way down to 100. I actually like having the really low number because that means I get a really great image. The thing about Sony, their sensors are so good. You can crank this up to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, and you're gonna get still great image quality. I usually try to keep it under 2,000, I like to keep it around 1,600 ISO and lower. Obviously, if you can keep it to 100, keep it to 100, but in terms of shooting in low light conditions and using a higher ISO when I need it, I never had a problem. So even without a fast lens, I could shoot still at like f.8 or f11 and it still would be great. Another thing I liked about this camera, and I know I'm talking most things that I like, but I'm going to get to the parts that I don't like because this camera definitely has some things that bothered me. But one thing I really liked, it had the 5-axis stabilizer, sort of like vibration reduction for Nikon, and Canon has their own version, and it really worked pretty well. I mean, you could handheld hold this. You could walk around just like this and just kind of pan and so forth, and you'll get pretty good quality without a gimbal or without anything else. So just walking around, running and gunning, the stabilizer really helped me out a lot. Now, some of the things that I don't like. The screen, as you can see, it comes out here, and I'm glad it folds out, right? But it just doesn't fold out enough. Like, why doesn't it tilts up, but why didn't it tilt this way so I could see it, so I could shoot myself? So I thought this would be a great vlogging camera, but you know, I need to see myself when I'm vlogging, so a lot of times I'm just holding it up and I don't really know the exact image that I'm getting, and that's kind of annoying. It does have a touchscreen, although I use manual focus lens. And talking about focus, I found the focus not to be that great, and the main reason was that it wasn't that this camera isn't built well, because with autofocus you can touch and so forth. I use manual focus lens, which might have been a problem. You might want to go with autofocus lens so you could use the autofocus detection and all the features that are built in for autofocus. But in terms of manual focus, I ran into a lot of problems, and the main reason was that the screen sucks so bad. I mean, this, for such an amazing camera, Sony does this. They make amazing cameras, but then they have like 1 or 2 features that are so annoying that it makes you not want to use the camera. But the image is so good that you still want to use it. So that's why in the beginning of this video I had that love-hate relationship. Indoors in controlled situations, this camera is great because you can take your time, you can see fine, but outdoors with a little glare, this thing is virtually like unusable. It's so annoying. Now they do have the peak feature, which is basically shows up with like basically like red lines or red little points where it's focusing. So if you use the peaking feature, you can get the focus like pretty accurate, but still you can't see the screen. You don't really know what's going on. I mean, for such a good camera, Sony, why don't you build a good screen that I actually can see what's going on? I mean, it just needed to be a little brighter, and I don't know all the details that go into a screen, but I've used Canon, Nikon, and the screen I can see perfectly what's in focus, what's not in focus. So with this one, it's a lot of guesswork, and I heard that before going in, and I was like, I can still do it. Well, the people who said that were right. It's super annoying. So if you're using this as like a travel vlog camera, or you travel and you do a lot of outdoor shooting, this can be super annoying. And for a camera that has a microphone output and is so small and lightweight to carry, it's just ridiculous that they wouldn't put a good screen. And for me, this is like the number one thing that I hate about this camera, the screen. If it just had flipped out and they made the screen a little brighter and be able to see it, this camera would be amazing, amazing. But the screen just totally ruins it. Now, one thing I'll say is the Sony's color profiles are amazing. You get to choose all different ones. So some people say, oh, I don't like the way Sony looks, right? I like the Canon look. You can make small changes in the camera without going into post to get it kind of like how you want it. Now, you're not going to get like the Canon look or the Nikon look or other camera manufacturer looks. So maybe that is a factor for you and you don't want to shoot with Sony and this isn't the camera for you. But I will say you can make a lot of adjustments with the color profiles, and I found it super helpful. I can make these small adjustments, little tiny adjustments with, you know, the saturation, the contrast, the sharpness, etc. And you can make that can save you a huge amount of time in post-production because you can get it right in camera. I believe you can get the image you want in this camera. Now, another thing Sony has is the S-Log. I've shot with S-Log and it looks super flat. It looks like no colors whatsoever, just super muted and flat tones. But it gives you a lot of leniency for color grading and post-production. To me, I feel like it's so much time and so much effort and you really can't get the colors you really want. It doesn't offer you the range of like a C300. Maybe if you wanted the A7S II, that might be better. It really has more dynamic range. But for this camera, I really wouldn't shoot S-Log. I think if you're gonna shoot S-Log, just save your money and buy a bigger and better camera like an A7S II or like a Canon C300, some camera like that. Now, this camera does have a burst mode where you can take up to 11 frames per second, up to 301 photos in JPEG. So you can take 301 photos in a row at 11 frames per second. To me, that's kind of crazy. So if you do sports or any action type of stuff, this would be great for that. Like I said, I didn't really use it for that. I use manual focus lens and mainly for video. So I think there's other cameras that you probably would use for sports that might be better. However, the versatility of this camera, that's another thing that makes it really versatile. Another thing, Sony, which I like, they have great time lapse. The time lapse was super smooth, super professional looking, all inside the camera. I didn't need to use an intervalometer. So though the time lapse is really great with Sony and you can control the speed, to me I would have liked to have a few more increments to make it faster. So some other cameras I've used, it has the ability to shoot and make like the clouds and everything move a lot faster. With this, it looks super great and professional, although I would have liked to have a few more adjustments where I could make the time lapse move much faster. So that was one slight downside, but overall it wasn't really that bad. I mean, the time lapse overall looks amazing. I gotta say, I've traveled everywhere with this camera, into the Amazon, into the desert, into the mountains, near the ocean. It's gotten wet, a little wet, it's been fine. So overall, this camera is tremendous. It stands up to travel, it's well built. So what is my overall conclusion of this camera? It's hard to say, you know, the build quality, the fact it's so light, I can use great audio without having a big camera. I travel around and I'm not gonna get sore. I can carry this just like my iPhone all day. I can go hiking, I can go running, I can do anything with this camera and it's gonna be great. The thing about it is the screen. Everything is great about this except the screen. If they had made a better screen, I couldn't endorse this camera more, but because the screen is so bad outside and because basically this is meant to be a traveling type of camera, it sort of defeats the purpose of having such an amazing camera when the screen stinks so bad. So I would recommend this camera still, but you know, I think I would rent it first. I would try to rent it, test it out first to see if you could deal with the screen. Another thing you might be able to do is to buy a screen hood. They do have some hoods and other type of accessories. But the whole point of having a camera like this is you don't want it to be big and bulky. You don't want to assemble some other things. So again, that was kind of annoying to me. So I never did buy that. I just kind of used it as is. And I think the more you use it and get used to it, you might be better with the focus and getting the picture just the way you want it. But not being able to have it just a great screen, outdoor running and gunning and shooting, both cinematically and run and gun vlog style, I would recommend this camera, but only with a grain of salt. I recommend it knowing that you're gonna have issues with the screen, you're gonna curse at Sony and ask them why did you do it? So if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe in the link below. Also in the link below, I have my photo gear guide where I share with you all my favorite photography equipment, and that gear guide is free to help you out make your best buying decisions. And if you purchase this camera or any other camera by clicking on the links below in these videos or on my website, I get a small percentage, and that will just help me make more videos like this for you. So I appreciate you guys watching, and have a great day. Alright guys, so one last thing, I forgot to talk about the batteries. Now the batteries are pretty good, they're not bad. For being, they're lithium ion batteries, they're relatively small, lightweight, like everything on this camera. So I would recommend buying 2 more. Depends how much shooting you do, but if you're gonna travel with these and you're gonna need the battery, you know you're gonna be shooting all day. I found having 3, I could shoot all day, the entire day, and I wouldn't have no problem. So, you know, like a 12-hour day, and I had no problem using 3 batteries. With that said, the last thing I wanted to mention was that some of the other Sonys, like the a7S and some of the other Sony cameras, have a problem with overheating. And even the previous model of this camera, the a6300, it would overheat, meaning you'd shoot for a while and then the camera would just basically stop. You wouldn't be able to film because it was too hot. Now with this camera, they actually fixed that problem. This camera I could shoot forever and ever and it wouldn't overheat. Now, I will say it's not 100% true. It's like majority of the time. I'm not someone who shoots, like basically just start shooting and shoot for an hour nonstop. I don't think most people shoot like that, but you could shoot for 10, 15, 20 minutes and not have any issues, or even longer. I mean, you could shoot interviews with this, you could shoot for a half an hour and it doesn't overheat. A couple of times it did, but I was in places where it was really hot and humid when it did overheat. But overall, that happened with, you know, using this for several months, shooting almost every day with it. That happened only less than a handful of times, maybe 3 or 4 times. So it was never an issue really. Like basically I would turn it off after it overheated. I would wait for maybe 30 seconds, a minute, maybe 2 minutes max. I would turn it back on and it would be okay. So I think that overheating issue Sony solved in terms of having enough batteries. If you just buy a couple extra spares, you'll be all set.
And now the fan of the day is my dad, Jack Garamella. Congratulations, Dad. You're the first fan of the day.